Well folks, I've made it back to Melbourne. We had a good weekend last weekend that just went by. Was up in Theberton, South Australia at the outlet there. We've had a lot of people come through. It was really nice to see you up there, South Australians, and Davern Park as well. Dominique, who's running that place out there, will also be running Theberton outlet for us. We'll announce the details in the coming episodes, meaning that the Theberton, which is normally opened every 4 to 6 weeks on average, will be opened every second week moving forward, and that'll be starting almost as soon as next week or the week after, but stay tuned for more info on that. More importantly, on the way back, because as you all have been asking, and most of you who've been using our bean straw are dying to get some more of that. No, we haven't found any. Our grower's still going through the whole process of growing it. Really bad season, as you can imagine, with the crazy weather. But what we have got our hands on is some aged pea straw, not fresh. When it's fresh, it can draw down nitrogen out of the soil, which I suppose if you've got a very acidic base, it's a good thing to have. But in most cases, people don't want that, and you need it to be aged. You want it to sit around for at least 4 to 6 months. This stuff's a lot older than that, 9 months old, and I actually love it. It's lighter. But what we're going to do with this, now this is a replacement for anybody who wants to try some of this pea straw. We've got to do it cheap online. Not a lot of it, by the way. We're going to try and source some more in the meantime. But what I want to demonstrate here is, because a lot of emails have come through, a lot of people are asking me, especially in South Australia, and this is the same in all states. There are areas where your soil is sandy, and there are areas where the soil is super clay. In both instances, the soil is difficult to work with. Sandy soil just drains away too quickly, doesn't hold that body. And I know you've got soil about 1 metre deep. Well, actually, it'd be a lot deeper than that in the ground if we could dig that far. And then we come along and put a layer on about that much, 3-4 inches, 100 mil, 70, 100 mil, maybe a bit more. You turn that into this sandy soil to get the body going into it. And then a week or two or a month or so later, it's all back to normal again. Dry, sandy soil, and all that mulch has disappeared. Now with the clay, same problem. You can't physically dig it because it's so hard. You hydrate it and then it becomes gluggy. Trying to mix in straw, compost and all that becomes a real difficult feat to be able to achieve successfully. So keep that in mind, those two soils, and I'm sure many of you got either one or the other and struggled with it. And then you've got areas in your garden bed where that doesn't actually grow. No matter what you try and do, it becomes hydrophobic. This is the ground. Same with raised beds, which I can probably do the same thing that I'm going to demonstrate here in a raised bed, but this is more so for ground beds. Beds on the ground where you've got a 3x3, 5x5, whatever size garden bed it is. Don't worry about digging it. Get rid of the weeds, obviously, but don't worry so much about digging it and try this little technique. I haven't done it. I've seen it done lots of times. I won't say hundreds of times, dozens of times, and it's very, very successful. What I'm talking about is getting a bale of straw. In this case, we're using pea straw. I've got a habit of saying bean straw, that's a problem. So we're using pea straw here, and I'm sitting it over this lawn patch here that has otherwise got no life in it, a bit of grass growing in it, but if I scratch around, this is it. It's just sand. Really, it is just sandy loam. Have a look here where it's dry. See that dust? It's just a ground full of dust, sandy crap. Nothing will really grow. I mean, things will grow, but they'll really struggle. So this sort of soil, to get the body in it, and this is nowhere near as bad as some of the places that are near the coastline where it's just completely sand. A lot worse than this. Down about 400 below here, we've got clay at the base. So we've got we're coupled with loam and then clay at the base, which really at the end of the day holds the moisture there, it doesn't allow it to dissipate, but we want to work the soil above. So what are we doing? We're getting a bale of straw, sitting it right on that space where you want to plant, hydrating it, which is why you see the moisture coming through, because I've only just started to do this, and I've carved out a little well in here, or a recess or a cavity, whatever way you want to call it. So it's almost like a planter, sort of a rectangle planter, but instead of using a plastic or ceramic or other pot, I'm using the bale of straw as that. Now, choose your method of digging the hole out. That's the hard part, really. By comparison to digging, it's the easy part. You're just using a serrated knife or something super sharp and just carve out the pieces you want to take out of the bale to create the potting area. So we just remove it like that, and don't throw this out, folks. You don't throw this out. You put it in your wheelbarrow and you activate it, just like we've been doing with the bean straw. We're doing the same thing with the pea straw. Now, I'd love to get my beans back, and we will soon, folks, but I came across this young farmer trying to sell his pea straw in the middle of nowhere, by comparison to where we live. And you know, we stumbled across, and it's on my path. So on my way back from Adelaide, however often I'll be going from here on, we'll be bringing some of this back to you. Now what we've got in here is water, Eco Butch, and our pea straw. There's some bean straw at the bottom of it, and a little bit of liquid gold if you like. So get a nice mix going, work out how much litrage your wheelbarrow can hold, if it's 70 litres or 100 litres. For every 10 litres you put 20 mil, so 100 litres will be 200 mil of Eco Butch. And soak it for 5, 10, 20 hours if you can. A couple of days even better. When it starts to stink to high heavens, that's ready. And I should say that, like the bean straw, the pea straw has peas in it, and they do germinate. Now they probably germinate a lot more than what the bean straw does, but at the end of the day, nothing wrong with that. I've got beans growing. In fact, let's have a quick look. Oh, how good are they, eh? Now these are broad beans growing out of the bean straw that I brought in here. Normally it doesn't grow as much as this, but this one in particular, or this bale that I pulled apart and spread out in here, has given me a hell of a lot of a crop there. Was that English or Greek? I think it was Greelish. So once you cut out your cavity, simply add water to hydrate it all. Just like that. It'll run through to the bottom, that's okay. Just make sure it doesn't pull up too much. If it starts to pull up, stop. Give it a few minutes and come back and do it again, because you want to hydrate the whole bed. Now, the thing about hydrating this is, folks, and I haven't explained why we're doing this, right? I just said get a bale of straw, dig a hole in it, sit it there, hydrate it. Why? Well, what happens here is we're going to activate this. Just as we're activating it in a wheelbarrow like here with our Eco Butch and liquid gold, we're going to start feeding this the same. So we're going to liquid feed this bean straw to activate it so we can get the biostimulant in here, which is the Eco Butch with our biostimulant, basically putting in the amino acids, and this will start to decompose, and then that's when the magic happens. As you know, with mulch, as it ages and you hydrate it and you've got the biostimulant in it, it starts to break down. And that breaking down process, which is a composting process, brings all these wonderful little critters coming in here to eat away at the mulch or straw. And then also the microbes kick into gear, because down below, right underneath the mulch, is the life in the soil that you want to activate. Now, this is old straw that I've had sitting here for a while. Admittedly, I'm not hydrating this, so it's not going to be so active as I would like it to be. But let's have a look underneath. Come and have a look at this. So all this is breaking down beautifully. See, look at that. We've got worms already. All this is breaking down. Look at that, worms. Now they're starting the whole process for us, and the microbes and the composting creatures will come along, and then they will work their way down to the surface, down to this ground here. They'll start to work into that. So you're leaving it there for a long time. Folks, this is not a quick fix. This is a long-term fix. Take your time fix. A couple of seasons, maybe 3 or 4, maybe a year, which is what we need for this to activate the sandy soil or the clay soil. So to get this one going, we've dug a hole or the cavity, and you need the good stuff in here, folks. Yeah, you're not going to plant straight into the straw. Look, some of you may like to try that out. If it's really old, the straw, yeah, it's already, you know, breaking down and composting, fantastic. Otherwise, a bag of planting mix like this over the top, in here, like that. And I'm going to plant a couple of big malaccas. I've got a couple of, believe it or not, these are early ones for us where we are out here. I've been away for a while, as you know, and we've got them in our planting mix, and these have been sitting in a tray of water, and I found a little worm in here, hey? They're already working in this stuff, so that's a good sign, and it's nice and warm. So we pop this in here like that, carefully, fill it up, and lightly press it down. I'm going to put a couple of these, multi-species planting, you reckon? Well, we might stick a little flower in between and a couple of spring onions. That'll work well. Sit that one in there like that. I reckon it's going to be grouse. Now on top, we're not going to leave this exposed like that, folks. We're going to cover that as well. But before we do that, let's just give it another water. You know, and every time you water, some of the particles from the planting mix will work its way through into the straw. and start activating it. And look, I can't wait to come back in a couple of months to see what's going on down below there. So let's just top that up now. I can hear the questions coming in thick and fast. What's going to happen to the tomatoes as they grow bigger? They're going to need more space in their growing medium, because instantly the thinking process is the roots are only going to stay in this little area here only, where in fact I'm expecting the roots to grow into the straw itself as well. As we feed it, as we water it and hydrate it, obviously it'll start to break through. And as you saw the mulch on the other side, which we haven't hydrated at all, on its own accord broke down, or was breaking down by weather and time. That's working beautifully, and I reckon if I planted something in that, it'll grow. So in this case here, where I'm actually maintaining this raised bed, so to speak, I'm growing my tomatoes, and if you think it's not deep enough, the little cavity, dig it deeper if you like. But the whole purpose is not to create just the wall, but to become a food source for the roots and the microbes, so they actually grow into that space and as it decays. Let's see how fast this pea straw breaks down. I reckon it'll break down pretty good. I reckon there will be enough time for the tomato to grow through. And if we're feeding it well, it's a growing medium at the end of the day. That's what we're treating it as. But more importantly, it's going to work its way through into the base. If you could find that video, I reckon I couldn't even find it, but there's a video we did about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, in fact, that we had 3 or 4 bales sitting under the trees of the eucalyptus trees, that is. And the ground there, as you know, eucalyptus allows literally nothing to grow underneath it. We had 2 or 3 bales of straw there. I moved one bale and I found billions of worms, literally, well, billions, you know what I mean, in there. And underneath there, it was alive. The soil was alive. It was activated. It had caved in the bean straw back then and sunken through, and it was being decomposed by the creatures and into the soil. And right next to it, where there was no bean straw sitting there, it was dry and barren as you know, the desert. So here, this is another way of fixing your soil whilst not losing a season of growing vegetables and flowers, and enjoying the wonderful life that you can put into the soil without having to work hard and digging it over. So if you've got a 3x3 bed, you can lay out 4 or 5, 6 of these bales, as many as you like basically. You can cover the entire bed with it. And remember, if you've got sandy soil and you're only putting this much, it's doing nothing. You need big bales like this sitting over the top. It's not going to happen in 3 months. And if you say, why not? I'm going to ask you, how long have you lived there, and how often have you tried, how many years have gone by, and have you struggled? If you've succeeded, I'd love to hear your methods. Really would. Was it a raised bed that you built? What did you do to make it work? But for those who've tried and failed time and time again, I'm not saying you can't do it, you're not good at it. Here's another idea that you can apply in your garden to see if you can activate sandy loam and break down clay at the same time, get the porous going through it. So we've done that. We can't leave the mulch, or the planting mix exposed, so we're going to put a little bit of mulch around the top. Yes, folks, we are going to mulch it because we don't want the sun shining directly on the planting mix, because it's a bag full of life. And if the bag full of life is exposed to too much sun, like we are as humans on our skin, everything dies, skin dries out. We've got to put protection on and start all over again. So a little bit of care like that. Hide the planting mix, and then we're going to finish with a gallon of our Eco Butch liquid gold. And this stuff we're going to do on a regular basis because it's not soaking in it, so we're going to need to top it up probably on a weekly basis, I reckon, and then cut back down to fortnightly to monthly. All right, have a look at those poor little souls in a bean or pea straw. They're available on our website, folks, only for click and collect. We can't ship them out. They're too big and messy. Ozpost doesn't want to touch them. I don't blame them. So you'll find them at vasilisgarden.com, and we're still running our spring super special, folks. So take advantage of the great deals every day and support your local garden centres and our outlets, because they're all owned by families. From me, Vasili, Maresi.